Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome to, I think this must be the third joint CIHT and CILT event that we've held here in Reading Town Hall. Tonight, I'd like to welcome Scott Witchall from Peterborough and Ruth Leuillette from Reading Borough Council. Today's talk is about Reading Station completion, the next stages, and the new Green Park Station down behind the Wadowski. Good for me, because I'm unfortunately a Reading supporter. The upgrade's taken 15 years from concept to delivery so far, and Scott's been involved from the outset on this.
So we'll briefly look at what we're covering, some of the background to the station and the vision that was developed and the challenges that emerged over the years, and then quite importantly looking at this is a major hub and a major upgrade, but one of the key things is how it works in context with its surroundings and the planned growth and development around the station hub itself, which leads you into some of the design issues and then the wider transport strategy measures that complement the major upgrade at the station, one of which, coming forwards soon, Ruth will talk about the Green Park Station, and we'll close just on a few common messages that emerged. So, gladly you all managed to get here so you know where we are, but if you didn't, that's us. Where the red and the blue lines cross, two of them, those are trans-European networks. The main line east-west out of London to the south-west, and then north-south from Southampton up to the Midlands. So these are the main trans-European network rail lines. That means they're fundamental to the nation's economy, both in terms of passenger movement and freight movement. The benefit to Reading is that all of those lines pass through Reading, so it's a great place to gain access by rail into interchange. And that is one of the key reasons why it's developed the way it has over the years. What Reading needed to do is understand its role in that region and try to develop a strategy to deal with the pressures of growth. So this is an early piece of work going back to mid-2000s, where we started to form a transport network framework around where the key hubs might be, starting with the main one in the centre being Reading Station here. But then how you connect that to the rest of Reading, because Reading, it can't all grow around the central hub around the station, there'll be growth beyond there. So you'll see on there the key rail corridors, but also the key road corridors, the river corridors, and how we could potentially link it all together with a series of hubs and interconnected mass transit connections. So that was a framework from a long time ago, but it was really setting the scene and the context about how we needed to grow. And then developing that further, that took the form of a series of core projects, as they were called, in the local transport plan from 2006. So top left there, probably the front runner was Reading Station, a major upgrade. But some other schemes that have come forward since then, the wide rollout working with Reading Transport of quality bus corridors, the M4 Junction 11 major upgrade with its bus priority measures, linking to Mere Oak Park and Ride, which is under construction, and then Green Park Station. So the series of core projects that are needed to deliver this growth were identified quite early on. So it's really good that the station some 10 years ago was very busy, not so good that it's heavily congested, and that was one of the challenges back in 2000, that it was recognised that if we were going to deliver all this growth, we needed to release some more capacity. At the time, and still today, Reading is the second busiest interchange station outside of London, and ninth busiest overall outside of London. And clearly, just looking at the photos, you can see it couldn't cope at peak times with a doubling of growth which was planned. So the other thing about Reading Station from this old aerial photograph is that if you compare this with other major, Reading happens to be the busiest and biggest town in the country, a lot bigger and busier than some cities. So if you compare this with other similar sized towns and cities, you would have thought the highest accessible location in practically the whole of the UK, being Reading Station, has got such low density development around it. So that's another challenge for the planning authority. Why have we got such low density development when we should be putting the higher density development in the most accessible locations? The other thing you'll notice from this image is just off to the northeast there, the proximity of the station and the town centre to the river, and the fact that the railway line, for all its benefits, has actually severed the town from the linkages to the north. So that was one of the other key challenges that we needed to look at in taking the scheme forward. You're the capital of Thames Valley, you're this magnet for growth, and you're attracting all this inward investment, and you tell people to come and visit to see if they want to invest in Reading, and this is what they see. So what do you expect them to do? So it's not just about capacity and accessibility, it's about the whole place, the sense of place, the quality, what it feels like, whether it's memorable. That is memorable for all the wrong reasons. One of the core challenges we had is that the bottleneck at Reading Station was well known in the rail industry and with the likes of Railtrack, but they didn't have the funds to deliver any significant upgrade. In fact, probably worse, they had a re-signalling and renewals commitment between 2011 and 2013, and that was effectively a like-for-like replacement of what was already there. It's going to cost them tens of millions of pounds, and you've got no extra capacity or very marginal increases in capacity. So there's no funding to upgrade it, but you can see there from the numbers at the time, those were the flows on the network then, let alone any planning for growth. So the bottleneck around Reading Station just wasn't sustainable if we were going to deliver this growth. So we needed to not only address the problem, but also bring all the various parties together to say, well, one part of government is planning all this growth and another part of government is saying we haven't got any money to deliver any capacity. So it could have been a major problem. So a series of visions and objectives were set out. These are the key 3 bullets from that. And I've talked about the transport development area. But removing the bottleneck was key, and mainly for us it was looking at the overall planning vision and transport strategy, how that related to the station and the interconnections with the station and what you needed to do for that hub to be successful. So then it became an issue of what you actually build. So the concept of the track, the platforms, the signalling, the capacity needed, all of those things had kind of been worked out and they formed the business case. What hadn't quite been resolved is what the bit in the middle looked like, the station itself. And this is where Reading needed to really start influencing what Network Rail were doing, because their development plans, which are part of this regional growth plan, included some major growth hubs around the station. These needed to be taken into account. And what Reading did is then develop a concept vision of what those numbers might look like, what the concept might look like, what you might have to do with the station to make it work in the context of not a load of sheds and warehouses, but a load of high density development, and what the connections might need to look like. So we need to think about your plans for growth on the rail network, but also the plans for growth around the hub in Reading. And we started to project the forecast forward and see what that meant. And when you started to map that out and look at the movements and the space needed for buses, taxis, mass rapid transit, cycle spaces, it started to map out a framework of what the station needed. Otherwise there wouldn't be enough capacity. And one of the oddest things with Network Rail is that they hadn't actually appreciated that Reading had 2 sides to it. It was all south-facing in their mind because the station had always been south-facing. Even back to the original Brunel station, it had 2 stations just on the south side and up on the down station that didn't really face the river. So we had to start working up the interchange plans around delivering that amount of capacity, and the only way we could deliver that amount of capacity was to spread that interchange zone away from just the one point on the south side and start to, in this case, disperse the interchange all through the town centre. This first piece here is as important as the station itself, how the town centre works, how the bus loop works, and then doing what we can with the remaining infrastructure so that the hubs around the station become a southeast interchange point here, southwest interchange here, and a new northern interchange up here. So that was fairly fundamental to get that message across, that to deliver the growth and capacity and to make the station work successfully, you needed to be able to access it from all directions. And the key point really around what's needed at the station is this one, that the guys at Network Rail were expecting the north side of the station to accommodate up to 10% of the total flows in the long term. So what we had to do is demonstrate to them, and these are not forecast projected long term with all the development in on the north side, these were what was happening at that time. So what they hadn't appreciated, that the northern entrance was so crap that people weren't using it, but we could demonstrate that they were actually coming in from that direction, and that if there was a proper entrance on the northern side, it would be much better used. So these are the arguments that we used to make the case for the northern entrance, which wasn't in the original scheme. So this is the royal opening of the station, and what is quite ironic is the Queen opened the northern side of the station, not the southern side of the station, and also that the northern side is pretty much the same as the southern side. If you look at it, it's a really good flagship gateway to the town, and you can see the land behind the hoardings, the Royal Mail Depot. That's owned by a developer now, and they'll be planning to take that forward for major development in due course. They helped deliver the necessary funding and land to make this scheme happen, because Network Rail's brief, you remember, was not to go outside their own railway land. So what Reading and the landowners had to do is work with them and say, look, you can have this land, we want the proper entrance. So that was a really good example of putting that together, and that's what it looks like from around. So just quickly to run through where we are with the station, and the main building, concourse and interchanges are practically complete now. The work out to the west here, which is the Western Flyover, if you're familiar with it, and Cow Lane Bridges, is almost there. The flyover is open. There's proof in this image provided by Network Rail. That was the very first train to go over the flyover to west of Reading. So the flyover was there, if you remember the Trans-European network where the freight lines come up from the south and hit the Great Western. So all the freight traffic had to cross the main lines, all the passenger traffic had to cross the main lines to go north-south. But now the flyover's in there, the high-speed trains can run straight through without disrupting any of that north-south traffic. So they picked a perfect day to launch the first train across the flyover. The bit that's not quite there yet is the local transport element of that, notorious Cow Lane Bridges as it's known locally. So that scheme can now go ahead. The flyover is in, as you can see there. This is the last piece of the jigsaw really. So this bridge is being demolished and a new road is being put through here to take away that bottleneck. And that route there is being retained for a segregated pedestrian cycle route across the railway at this point. So using the infrastructure benefits that come from the major rail scheme to deliver not only a major road improvement but substantial improvement for pedestrians and cyclists. Facilities are practically non-existent through there at the moment. So I mentioned the interchanges. I just wanted to touch on some of the components very briefly. So you've seen the image of these, so I won't dwell on them, but it was about space, about quality, about connectivity, all the things you'd expect to see. So is that a new ground-breaking approach? Well, there's the original station, and looking back on this, there's some glaring similarity. You could say they got it right. They had enough space and capacity for 100 years' worth of growth in front of the station, all the pedestrian cycle space you would have needed. So we've had to agree with them and put it all back. So we're almost back to where we were when it was originally opened, with all of that public realm, the interfaces, the pedestrian cycle space, the space that needed outside a modern station to deliver that sort of growth. And on the southwestern side, the rig through underneath the station's public access route 24/7 has been opened up, and the whole public realm square to the southwest has been opened with new bus and taxi interchanges. What's already happened since all of this funding was announced and since this station was delivered is that the development that was being talked about has started to come forward. These are two major schemes that have now got planning permission started on site. So Thames Tower, which some people may know as the old Foster Wheeler building right opposite the station, that's on site now under construction, so 3 more stories on that, reclad, extra space. And then Station Hill, the other scheme right next to it, demolition starts imminently on the horrible old buildings that are there, and that major new scheme's coming forward. Now between them they're delivering over 1 million feet of commercial space, 300 housing units, retail, leisure, and the sorts of higher density development that you need around the hub rather than the lower density sheds. So I think I've bored you enough there, and I'll hand over to Ruth, who's going to take you through the next steps beyond Reading Station.